Hello everyone, in this recording we'll discuss D3 selections. So this is where things begin to get a little bit like magic, so it should be a bit of fun. So first of all, what are selections? Why do we need them? The idea is that a lot of D3 visualization is going to be taking any existing attributes and manipulating them somehow. So how might you manipulate an attribute? You might take certain SVG elements and change their properties, or you might start appending new elements or removing elements from a web page. So maybe when you click somewhere, you should add some circles. Maybe when the user clicks and drags on something else, you remove a bunch of points. You can think of it abstractly. We'll see concretely in this lecture. So how does most of this sort of manipulation happen? It first is started by something called a D3 select or select all. So the way this is going to work is it's going to search through all the tags in an HTML page. D3 select is going to look for the first tag that matches a certain query. D3 select all is going to look for all tags that match a certain query. How do you define queries on a web page? You use the same kind of syntax that you use in querying for CSS. And so if I want to find a specific element based on its ID, I can use this pound sign symbol. So if I had some attribute with ID equals test, then D3 select pound sign test is going to find that one element. If I had a class that I was applying to a bunch of elements, say I had a class highlighted for a bunch of points in some scatterplot, then I can use d3.select.highlighted to get all the circles with that highlighted class. You can also just get it by the type of tag it is. So if you wanted to get all the circles, you could do circle. If you wanted to get all the h1 header tags, you could just do d3.select h1. So there's a lot that goes into just figuring out these queries. We'll get a lot of practice with this over the course. Okay, so just some examples. Okay, actually this is a little bit more sophisticated example. It's not just selecting a single kind of element based on ID or class, it's actually nesting these different kind of queries on top of one another. Right? So you can imagine wanting to have class highlighted for a whole bunch of types of objects, like maybe some rectangles and also some circles. But maybe you only want to select the highlighted circles and not the highlighted rectangles. So how would you do that? You could use, say, like first select the circles, and then among those circles, select the highlighted ones. So you can chain these queries together just by concatenating the strings. A very natural way to do this is to do a group element. So remember I mentioned the G tag in the very first lecture about HTML. You can select groups using an IDE, and then all the sub elements, all the sub tags of that group, you can apply some further query. Okay, and then similar, you can nest ID to different types. Okay. An important point, you can store these selections in a variable. This is what's going to let us manipulate things later. So far, we're only defining queries, we're only selecting items. But later, we're going to want to take that item and we're going to want to change it somehow. So in order to refer to it later on, we're going to want to store it in a variable. How do you actually change it? You can use either this attr attribute or attrs functions. This will change one attribute for you. This is probably the most common approach you see in D3. Attrs will allow you to change multiple properties at once. I tend to prefer it because it's a little bit more concise, but it's not as common because it requires an extra library. So whenever I'm loading D3 selection multi, it's only so that I can refer to this attrs function. Okay, let's look at how you can start manipulating things using attrs. So this is a basic HTML page. I've added a circle at location 5050, and it has radius 20. I've created 4 path elements, and these are the locations of the corners on that line. And I've applied classes. So the first 2 of these paths, I've applied a class wide. The second 2 of them, I've applied class narrow. And then I'm putting some JavaScript code here. So what is this JavaScript code going to do? It's going to select and change this basic HTML that I've just defined. So You can see this here. So I've selected the element with the ID change me. So that's this circle. And I'm saying I want to fill it with this color. You can look up the color. I don't remember off the top of my head. And then I'm selecting all the paths with class wide, or just all the elements with class wide, which happen to be these two paths. And I'm changing their width so that it's 20 pixels wide. And all the ones which are narrow, I'm changing it so that it's just 1 pixel wide. So if you load this HTML page in your own browser, what you will see is exactly this. Right? So I guess this color is like a orange-red, and these are the two wide paths. These are the two very narrow ones. So yeah, this attr is just changing these properties in this. If you had not included this modify selection JavaScript, it would draw these, but without any of these properties. Okay, so if you ran this in the browser, it might have looked like it happened immediately, but actually it was applied after the fact. The reason it looks immediate is because it gets applied so quickly. We can slow it down by adding this transition. So it's saying, select this HTML element and only gradually change it to these attributes. And I'm saying, give it 2 seconds, so 2000 milliseconds. So now if I reload this, we can look. Right, so it started out as a black circle, and then it transitions to this red color. And they all started with the same width, but then the widths changed after I used this attr function with a delay from the transition. Okay, so that is how you will manipulate most objects in D3. Text is a little bit different. The way you modify text is you use this .text. You don't use .attr. So here I just have a one header tag. It says change me at the beginning. And what I'm going to do in this JavaScript is it's going to try to find that h1, that one header tag, and then it's going to delay in 2000 seconds. It's going to try to say it's changed. Actually, I don't think the delay has any effect here, so you could even remove this delay. So reload it, so it's just empty. So, oh yeah, okay, the delay actually, it stops for 2000 seconds and then it changes. Okay, so that is how you take an element you've queried and you modify it. You can either use attr, attrs, or text. You can entirely remove an element by using .exit. So if you added this to the end of our first example, it would remove the circle. Okay, you can also append elements in addition to removing it. So how you append an element is you say, what is the parent tag? What is the node on the tree to which I want to add a new child? Then I append whatever I want that kind of tag to be. So here it's saying, select the G element. So where was the G element? It's here. So select this one and add a new path. That's what d3.selectg.append path does. And what do I say afterward? I say what properties I want on that path. I say it's going to be class wide. This is going to be its location, starting at 100, 0, and then moving to 205. And this is going to be the color. This is kind of purplish color. So before we had only four of these lines. Now we have 5 because it's appended. We can try noticing how it enters by using a transition. And a very common kind of transition whenever you're appending elements is to first append it invisibly and then gradually make it visible. So that's what's happening here. So I've taken this path, I've appended it totally narrow, stroke width is 0, and then after 1 second, I'm going to increase the size to 20. So let's just look at that as it loads. Right. Okay, so that happened really fast because it's only 1 second. But then you can see it is getting appended and growing. So there we have, you know now how to query elements on a page using D3, how to modify it, how to maybe remove elements, and also how to append them. Once you have these kind of 4 basic operations down, you can do all sorts of interactivity.